in my interest to be a young astrologer and to be just starting out in a post-pandemic world. Most definitely. Hello, and welcome to Mercury Rising with your boy Joji. It's been a while since I made a video, and that's for sure. I've been a little bit in the background trying to figure out what I'm gonna do with this channel, what I'm gonna do with my life, and what I was gonna do with my astrology. I took the time to get certified actually. At the time where when I was recording the first videos for the channel, I was still doing my Hellenistic course, but now that has changed. I have finally finished, and because of that, I think I'm a little bit more ready to be more consistent. I made a website. I'm making some like really big leaps out here. And because of that, I thought that I should do a proper introduction so you can get to know me and get to know what I do, a little bit of my story, and a little bit of what I have planned for this channel for the future. And yeah, so here's a few questions that I thought people might have before trying to talk to me for either a consultation or just for sticking around and looking at the future astrology content that I have to offer. But with that, let's get to the questions. Well, my name is Jose Gomez dos Santos Neto. It's a pretty long one. I am Brazilian, and that's why I go by Joji, because it's a little bit easier than to say than the whole thing. Also, because people will automatically default to Jose, and I really don't like that because that's not my name. So Joji it is. That's how I like to be called. Like I said, I'm Brazilian, but now I live in Canada. And yes, that's pretty much well, who I am summarized very, very shortly. But I guess a little bit of history. Growing up, I always wanted to be a musician, and I got really into making music on the computer. Somehow down the line, I ended up releasing an album. Surprisingly enough, just by listening to the album, you can kind of already tell like the route that I was gonna go under with my life, just because it is such a, I guess the best way to put it is just extremely introspective to the point that it's unnecessary and almost a little pretentious. But yes, that's who I am, I guess. Well, it was a really long time ago. I was a kid, and I think I was actually not introduced to astrology until later on, or maybe it was like the same person that introduced it to me. I didn't have many friends growing up. I had mostly online friends back in Brazil, all over the world and all over the country, because Brazil is a pretty big country. There was this one guy, I think he was from São Paulo. Shout out to you if you somehow watch this. His name was Matthias. Yeah, so he was talking to me about numerology and how it can tell you about your personality and things like that. I think he also progressed to tell me about astrology, and I did it as a kid and was like, whoa. Like this is a thing that can happen. Wow, that's wild. And also growing up in general, I've had the one magical friend. I think this is like a common trend with a lot of people who are into astrology, tarot, spirituality, the occult, and all that. There's always that one weird magical friend, and he also talked to me a lot about not astrology. I didn't think he talked to me about astrology per se, but just like a very animist worldview where everything is alive and where everything is possible. So that was really cool, and I guess, what really got me not into astrology, but started making me think about the world in the way that astrology does, especially as a kid. I grew up with a very Catholic family, so astrology and these kinds of things weren't necessarily seen as positive. So, so yeah, I didn't have like a direct outlet, but it wasn't until I came to Canada that it really exploded, and I really started looking into it. I remember it was this book called Conversations with God that really got me into like spirituality. And from there, I looked more into astrology and tarot, and I kind of just started passively doing it. I would have all my friends' charts, and I'd kind of like have little insights to tell them about it, and I would like do a fun party trick and read tarot for somebody. But and some people even, I remember back in the day, some people even telling me, "Yo, you should charge people for this. This is a career option." And I was just like, I don't think this is a career option. But look where I am now. Um, but yeah, I was at that point. I was just really focused on like making music and trying to make a career flourish out of it. It didn't, but my life is not over yet. So maybe there's still time for some astrological music. Wink, wink. Hint, hint. But yes, that's how I got into astrology. I started learning astrology really seriously with the pandemic. Right before the pandemic started, I had a business partner and we're going to open a studio together, like a recording studio. We had a little duo band thing going on called Dusty Cherries. um, but yes, so that didn't happen because we lost our jobs, like many people in the pandemic, and kind of lost all sense of purpose in what I was gonna do, and I feel like this is those times where you really turn to astrology, mysticism, or anything sort of like other than material to really make sense of life, and that's what I did. Through doing that, I started doing some freelance writing, and as I was freelance writing, because I already was into astrology and tarot and all these things, I started writing for like wellness blogs, and every now and then there would be like the one astrology gig that would just be fun, and it was super easy. It wasn't anything super serious, but I remember doing one on the Mercury retrograde of 2020. It was the Scorpio Mercury retrograde. I think it was in October. I think it started in Libra and then swapped to Scorpio or something like that. But yeah, so that happened and I wrote it, and that just kind of clicked. And I was like, whoa, like astrology is a lot of fun. I guess I can really just write about astrology. So I stopped looking for any other writing gig. I only looked for astrology gigs, and I actually got a substantial amount. And I'm kind of answering another question that will come in the future, but because of this whole ordeal, decided to really take it seriously. And at the same time, I was watching a lot of Chris Brennan's podcasts, and so I was like, you know what? I really like Hellenistic astrology. This seems like the goes in line with my philosophy of life, and it goes in line with the kind of thing that I would like to study. Anything that's like very theory heavy. That's why I, as a musician, really liked or like jazz because I like anything complicated, just for the sake of being complicated. I went and started doing the course. I just finished it, and I'm still doing some of Chris's courses. But yeah, that's where I learned astrology primarily through Chris's Hellenistic astrology course. But I also have done some of Austin Koplik's courses. I've done his courses on the decans on and another one on the proper care and feeding of a chart, which was a pretty interesting course, and just a few other ones here and there. Definitely plan on doing more to continue with my education. I feel like where I am right now, I do know enough to start like a practice around what I know, but there's definitely some things that I want to dive deeper into. So for now, this is where I learned my astrology. Also, I guess it's good to mention some of the books that I've read because I know that some people might be interested in knowing my experience learning astrology so they can also learn from how I've learned. But some books that were really important for me, of course, was Vedi's Valence Anthologies, but that I read through the course with Chris Brennan, so I guess it doesn't really make that big of a difference. But Joy Usher's Tiny Universe, that's I guess my My go-to book as of now, like I before consultations and things like that, I'm always like taking a look back at it and looking at references and things like that too. And I think the first book of astrology that I've ever read was the only book of the only astrology book you'll ever need, by Woolfolk, I think that's their last name. I forget. It's been a while since I read that book. And it's also more down the modern astrology line, which is something that I stepped away from more recently. Not so much. Still, definitely use a lot of like modern things in my practice more than any other Hellenistic astrologer would do. And at the end of the day, we're not really Hellenistic astrologers. We're in 2021. But anyways, yes. So that's where I learned astrology. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. Yeah. So I primarily have had experience writing astrology. Um, like I said in the past, I started writing for blogs and things like that. I've done a lot of like ghostwriting horoscopes, but most of my experience really comes from consultation work right away, when I started really looking into becoming a proper astrologer. I started taking consultations, and I was I was writing for this company at a time that had like a pretty stable fan base, and I ended up talking to a lot of the members, and the members wanted astrology and I wanted to practice astrology, so I ended up reading for a whole bunch of people like that. That was a really great experience, and especially like when I first started, and even though I was already like in the field, basically, right out of the gate, I was reading charts. I was telling everybody that I was new and that I was learning, and I primarily wanted to do it because I was learning, and that was just great. Yeah, I did wing it, and I think that now, well, I don't think. I now for sure know that with what I know now, I can provide a much better experience. But then I still did know enough that it became like a little bit of a collaborative process with the client to be like, hey, I'm doing this because I'm learning and I want to see how your chart works. I think you also want to see how your chart works, so let's just sit together, and with my knowledge, I'll tell you how things work, and then we can learn together through this. And that's basically how I approach my consultations at first. Because of that too, this is a thing that I kind of brought into my consultations now. I do like to make it a little bit of like, hey, I'm your friend. Let's sit down with your chart and try to understand what this can possibly mean. Um, and there's a lot of theorizing that happens together, and that's what I like to do. I could sit there and just tell you like, oh, so people who have this equals that, but I don't think this is as fun, and I like making sure that people are part of the process too. Most definitely. This is yeah, it's a big leap of faith on my part, and it's also like when you're going in to see an astrologer, there's definitely a power imbalance. That's for sure. Like you go to a person who presumably can take a look into the future for you, and there's a lot of pressure that goes into that. And as much as I am proud of my predictive capacities and the kind of work that I do, um, I my age definitely will make a difference, and not just my age, but not so much because of like, oh, I'm young, blah blah blah. It's simple as that. I don't think that's it. But there's just certain aspects of life that I haven't seen or experienced yet, and this is gonna be true for the rest of my life. As a person, nobody can live throughout the full spectrum of possibilities of human experience. That's just not happening. But there's definitely some things that come with adulthood, and that's what the Saturn return is all about. Yes, as much as I don't have that much of an insight onto things like how it is to be married or how it is to have children and how to deal with that, and even though I might be able to see like good fortune and bad fortune related to those areas in the chart, how I talk about it will be very different than a person who is of that age group and who has dealt with things, even if not directly by their own sort of experiences with having children, with being married, and with age and all that, but through others as well. Because I'm also young, most of my friends are probably going to be also around my age. A lot of there's a wide spectrum of things that don't happen to people my age, or we're yet to see it come in the future. So that definitely does make me a little bit anxious, and especially as I've read for a few older people than I am. Things get very different because as much as there's a power imbalance in as an astrologer, now I also have to be sure that I'm not sounding like pretentious, like this kid that thinks he knows everything about life, which I don't. Um, it's one thing to be able to see something coming up in the future, and one thing to understand how to deal with it. And I guess that's for that reason I like to stick to people around my age because I'm dealing with problems myself that are similar or if not related to what you're doing. Because of that, I can give much better insight on that regard. And I think that's how my demographic is gonna be for the most part. So I'm not too concerned about that. But yes, it is a little bit anxiety inducing to be a young astrologer. Not only because of that, but just because as far from a business standpoint, I don't know what's going on. I am out here trying my best, and I'm just trying to have a good time and make sure everyone has a good time. But I don't know what I'm doing business wise. So I would try my best to be understanding and to bring something insightful to the table. But for sure, as of now, I'm still growing and gaining the maturity that I need to deal with these sorts of things. So for sure, this is something to keep in mind if you're trying to book a consultation with me. Well, being an astrologer, age is a pretty important factor because astrologers primarily deal with time, and if you are young enough that 20 years feels like a long time, uh, you're probably gonna have your perception of time is probably gonna spill into how you talk about these things. But at the same time, I think that what my consultations offer that might be interesting even for people who are older is the young, exciting, and youthful approach to life and to astrology that I do have. I think as much as my astrology is concerned, I really try to focus on the things that might be a little bit more challenging or where the drama is at in the chart. Like at the end of the day, the chart is telling me a story, and I want to know what where the meat of that story is, and I think that's what the client also wants. So yeah, and I think that that thirst for something cool and interesting is what I have to offer. That I wouldn't say some other astrologers won't, because I'm sure there are great astrologers out there who can also do the same thing. I'm not that special, but at the end of the day, you cannot only get my style of that with me. I'm just really excited about life and really of doing some like detective work and looking into the future and seeing what can be coming for you. And I think that that same excitement that I do have can get you excited about your life. And even like when more challenging things come up, I still try to spin it in a way that it does look thrilling and exciting like it does in a movie. Like when you're watching a movie and the climax and the most difficult part for the hero comes in, you're not sobbing for the hero. Sometimes you might be, but for the most part, you're really just getting excited about how he or she or they will overcome him. And yes, I think that that's the same excitement that you have for a character that I'm trying to instill in you having about your own life and for yourself. And even when there's these sorts of things that do look a little bit more challenging, I do try to focus on when they're going to get better and see how what the chart's narrative is telling me, what you're gonna have to go through for to get to that better moment. And and this is given. Life is cyclical. As much as there are negative moments in negative situations, challenging situations or whatever, they're always going to get better at some point. And this is what I'm looking for. I'm trying to see. I guess if I could have like a really cheesy one-liner slogan, is that I'm trying to see when your hero moment is gonna come around, you know, and what your hero story is. Because at the end of the day, we're all heroes. Life is pretty difficult, and it's difficult for everyone. No one's safe, and but that difficulty is also what makes it exciting. And I think that that's the perspective that I bring to my consultations that make it special. Yes. With that said, if you want to get a consultation with me, you can go to my website. It's themercuryrising.com. Over there, you're going to get, you can read a little bit more about me, see all that I offer, and yeah, you can subscribe to keep up with any articles that might be coming up, or any new thing that I might be planning. And I do have a lot of stuff that's being planned. Hopefully, I come around to making it. But yes, until then, thank you so much. It was nice getting. Well, I'm not gonna pretend that I got to know you because we haven't really talked yet. But you got to know me, and if you want me to get to know you, you know what to do. All right, peace.